10 years ago, the Ontario Superior Court ruled that this province discriminates against same-sex parents in the way it registers who counts as the child's parents at birth. A private member's bill aimed at fixing that unanimously passed second reading at the Ontario Legislature late last year. But the Liberal government now intends to offer its own bill before the end of this year. Joining us now for more, the author of the private member's bill called Cy and Ruby's Act, Sherry DeNovo. She is the NDP member for Parkdale High Park and her party's critic for LGBTQ issues. And Jennifer and Kirsty Mathers-McHenry, the parents of Cy and Ruby. And we are delighted to welcome everybody here to our table here at TVO. I want to start because, it's not that we're not interested in you, we are interested in you. But we also happen to have a documentary on this subject, the North American premiere of the documentary Gaby Baby, which will be airing on TVO day after Canada Day. Saturday night, July 2nd. It's a story of same-sex families told by the kids. Let's see a clip. Roll it, please, Sheldon.
I didn't have a dad, as you know, so I had this thing called a donor. A donor is when a man delivers sperm into the hospital, into a little container, and then they freeze it so it's all fresh, and then they give it to the two women that want to have a baby, and then they have a baby. And we did that, and now I'm here.
Okay, Jennifer, Kirsty, let's go for a real hard-hitting question off the top, okay? Tell us about your kids.
Go ahead.
All right. We have two kids. Their names are Cy and Ruby. Ruby is almost 6 years old. She will be going into grade 1 in September. Cy has turned 2 just last Friday. They are both little gregarious wee things that are the delights of our lives.
What are they into right now?
Ruby loves karate. She can't get enough of her karate. Cy mostly likes saying no and being obstinate, but he's 2, so that's to be expected. He likes a bouncy castle. They both love spending time at the park.
When Jennifer was in labor with Ruby, who is the older of the two, and should get first billing in the bill, but that's another story. What happened?
Well, it wasn't good. A lot of what happened wasn't good. Jennifer had a very, very difficult labor, and there was a period of time in the labor and delivery room where Jennifer's her heart rate was high, her heart rate was low, her heart rate was high again. She got very quiet, which was nervous-making, and Ruby's heart rate was doing all kinds of terrible things, and I had this experience of worrying that I was going to lose Jennifer. I think that was a possibility that really hit me in that room, and then sort of following on the heels of that, there was this very concrete suddenly realization that I had no legal standing with respect to Ruby.
What do you mean you had no legal standing?
Well, at the time when she was born, I wasn't considered at law to be a parent. So, Jennifer and I had planned this family together. We had attended doctor's appointments. I had felt the baby kick. We had had baby showers in my hometown of Kingston and Jennifer's hometown of Sarnia.
Are you two married?
We are. We've been married. We got married in 2007. And it had really been this joyous process of making a baby and getting ready to welcome a baby into our life. And then in that delivery room, in that moment, there was this realization that the law stood in the way of my ability to care for our child if something did happen to Jennifer, that it was really unclear whether I would be able to care for the child, whether I would be able to leave the hospital with Ruby.
Because you had no legal standing.
Because I had no legal standing, right? I was a legal stranger to our daughter.
Let's bring the member of the Ontario Legislature in at this point. Why did the law, or why does the law, not give any legal recognition or standing to the other parent in this situation?
Well, because the law considers the other parent to be the known sperm donor in this instance, who may or may not, in this case, does not want to be the active parent necessarily. So, and I think most Ontarians would be shocked by that. I think most Ontarians think that, since we've had same-sex marriage for a long time now, and we've made some inroads on queer rights generally in this province, we're a beacon in some respects, that parents also have rights, the same rights as heterosexual parents, and they don't. And I think that's shocking.
So just so I'm clear, the person who donated the sperm
Has more rights than the legal mother, the legal wife in this instance, right? Who's not considered the legal mother.
Did you know this before you had gone to the hospital to give birth?
We did. Kirsty and I are both lawyers. I'd been counsel on one of the cases in this area that expanded the availability of declarations to multi-parent families. So we were, I would call it almost painfully aware of the hoops that we were going to have to jump through. I don't think it resonated with either of us how concrete the impact would necessarily be or could be on us as a result of the fact that we didn't have legal recognition, but we're certainly aware of it.
You're both lawyers, so presumably you started to explore or investigate possible legal avenues that would give you the legal recognition you sought, did you?
We knew what our options were. Frankly, I think before we even conceived, we'd figured all of that out and had hired counsel and knew which option we were going to go with. We could either have Kirsty adopt our child, which fundamentally did not sit well with us because adoption is the creation of a new relationship. Or the other option was we could obtain a declaration of parentage by going to the court. And a declaration we still didn't like because it was an unnecessary hoop. It was expensive, it took time. There were all sorts of problems with it, but what it did do was acknowledge an existing relationship. So it was marginally more palatable.
You ended up before a judge at some point?
We did, twice now.
For what?
Twice we appeared before a judge. We made an application to obtain a declaration. We sent our sperm donor to get independent legal advice. We went to court to obtain a declaration both that Kirsty was the mother of our children and that our sperm donor was not a parent. We obtained the declaration both times, in each case a number of months after the baby was born.
Was the judge helpful?
The judge was lovely, but to be honest, I mean, I think the judge, particularly in the first instance, saw it as a joyous occasion, and that wasn't the way we experienced it. It was very much a unnecessary and discriminatory hurdle that we were getting over. So, you know, the judge was celebratory and tried to create a kind of celebratory mood that this was this wonderful thing that was happening that day, and we finally had security for our children, which obviously was good. But what wasn't great was the fact that we had to do it in the first place.
I mean, heterosexual couples don't have to adopt their own children. Imagine that. And especially after a difficult birth, to have to contemplate that is outrageous.
You've been championing these issues for a very long time. How much of this do you think, you know, I could see some people watching saying this is such an anomaly. This hardly happens every day in Ontario, so why do we have to get fussed about this? So how often does this happen?
Well, I don't know the statistics, but if it even happened once, Steve, it's once too many. This is an unequal situation. The LGBTQ 2S people do not have equal rights if they don't have equal parental rights, and that's really what we're talking about and fighting for. And yes, I've been doing it for 45 years now, fighting on this front. But I was even shocked when they came to my office and said, "This is what you have to go through," because I, like most people, didn't realize the situation. Last year we banned conversion therapy, and it was equally shocking to me as I traveled around Ontario with a Gay-Straight Alliance committee that psychiatrists were still trying to turn queer kids straight. Shocking. Well, it's still going on, and this is still going on.
Can you just sort of play it forward for us a little bit? If for example, the bill that you've got before the legislature or the government's bill that they propose for later this year, if they don't make the change to the law that you think is appropriate here, what are the down-the-road implications for a couple that doesn't have the kind of legal protection that your bill would offer?
Well, fundamentally, this is a question of human rights, and I think everyone in Ontario should be concerned about human rights for everyone. So when there's a segment of the population that doesn't have the same human rights as the other segment of the population, that's everybody's business, and it's everybody's legal business. So really, we can't exist in that situation. We have existed in it. It's been too bad. It's been fought for in the courts, and I'm sure you'll be asking about that. But it's not just, it's not ethical, it's not moral, and I think we have to move on from here. Do
you, Jennifer, not having Kirsty recognized as sort of the legal parent of the child, can you help us understand what I understand the human rights argument, but what are the sort of day in and day out nuts and bolts difficulties around that?
There's very concrete implications. Certainly if you're not recognized as a parent, theoretically at least, you can't take your child to the doctor. You can't travel with your child. You cannot register your child for school. You cannot obtain parental leave benefits, which is something that we ran into with Cy because we didn't have a declaration before Kirsty was on a parental leave. There's any number of very concrete implications in addition to the human rights implications. But for society as well, causing us to jump through those legal hoops, it's expensive for us, but it's expensive for the average taxpayer as well. The fact that we are clogging up the courts with families like ours going to get rubber stamped or going to get declarations from judges to say, why, yes, you are a family, and yes, you are the parents of your children, is absurd. It is expensive, it is unnecessary, and as a taxpayer, even one not directly impacted by this, I would be outraged that it continues. Additionally, of course, if, as you put it, the law doesn't pass, either the Liberals' bill or the bill we drafted, if this does not get fixed, the constitutional litigation, which is ongoing, will continue. That is not cheap. The last time that we attended in court, there were any number of lawyers that were all on the public dime who were there defending a regime that we know needs changing. So that will continue and that will march forward, and that is at all of our expense.
Let's just, I mean, every time there's a new baby born, you've got a relationship with the Ontario government, you got to go get forms filled out, all this business, you go to Service Ontario, deal with that. You had to do that, I presume?
I did. Well, usually I'm responsible for that in our family. I'm the one that goes and gets health cards renewed and all of that. And of course, I couldn't get a health card for Cy. Couldn't apply, even filling out the birth registration
You
form.
could not get Cy's health card.
Again, I was a legal stranger to the children when they were born. So until we had that court order that said that I was a mother, none of those steps could be taken by me. Right? The law really did stand as a barrier in the way between me and my ability to take care of our kids in a way that, as Jennifer says, it's just costing everybody money. It doesn't make any sense. Clearly, we're going to fix it.
It doesn't sound like you're questioning that. It sounds like you're stating that.
Well, we've been committed to fixing this from the get-go, right? I think once Jennifer and I sort of had the experience of having me denied benefits, and really that crystallized for us the fact that steps had to be taken and that this couldn't continue indefinitely. So at that point, we reached out to our MPP, we reached out to the Premier's office. We had conversations, everybody agreed this is a problem. People were shocked, people weren't, our MPP, Peter Tobbins, wasn't aware that this situation existed, and as soon as we brought it to his attention, he said, great, let's draft a law, let's get a bill going, let's fix this, right? And then Sherry got on board and away we went.
That's where I want to pick up the story now, because this court decision that has brought all this to the fore is 10 years old already. What's happened in 10 years?
Well, you can answer this better. I mean, parents have been fighting. They've been fighting and filling out forms in those 10 years. And we've had a situation where parents have had to jump through hurdles and not been recognized for 10 years. And
But why legislatively has nothing been done to change this situation in 10 years?
Good question. But I think the answer is we're doing it now. I spoke to the Attorney General. I spoke to Yasir this morning. I know you're speaking to him on the show. And we're both committed. We're all committed to making sure that this gets done and gets done quickly, hopefully between September and December in that session. So we're sitting down over the summer. We're looking at possible amendments, changes, make the bill better. We're all in favor of that. If there can be a better bill, that's the bill we want, and let's go forward.
Did you three, we got two lawyers here and a member of the Ontario legislature. Did you three write this bill together?
Well, Joanna Radbourg was also involved. There were, and the two, there were a number of people, and of course, Ledge Council was involved. There's a lot of back and forth about this bill. It's a complicated bit of legislation, but at the end of the day, it's very simple, and that's simply giving human rights to everyone.
Did you, Jennifer, model it after another jurisdiction?
We took a look at a number of different jurisdictions. British Columbia in particular has had much more expansive parental recognition for a number of years, and that was one of the jurisdictions that we took a look at. The bill that we drafted was not modeled after it necessarily, but inspired by it. We took steps to have the legislation be a little bit smoother and a little bit broader, and really the question ultimately that our bill asks is, who is going to parent these children? Let's have the law recognize those people, and let's have it be easy. So that was the starting point for the drafting process, but certainly we took a look at what they've done in other jurisdictions, including BC, Quebec, and Saskatchewan.
Does it matter to you whether or not this bill that you have all worked on is passed, or whether the Ontario government creates its own and does its own thing?
No, right? I mean, we want this to be done. We want kids to stop living in limbo. We want families to stop having to spend money on lawyers and living, for months with that uncertainty that we faced and the difficulties that ensue. We want taxpayers to have to, stop having to spend for unnecessary court dates. We just want it to get done. We want it to get done right. We're happy to work with the government to get the bill done right. And as Sherry said, if it's a better bill at the end of the day, great, right?
When you heard that the Liberal government was prepared to move on this issue and create its own bill, which presumably they want to get done by the end of this calendar year, how did you regard that development in this story?
I mean, we've been saying we're cautiously optimistic, and I think that remains true, right? We put a bill in the field. It protects our community. It was written largely by a group of lesbian and bisexual and queer lawyers for queer families, for queer children. We think we wrote a good bill. If we can make that better, again, we're really happy to participate and to work with that. I think as long as the bill that gets introduced is as inclusive and covers as many families as the one that we drafted, all the better.
Has the Attorney General, I know you just talked to the Attorney General earlier today, has he given you, and we're going to hear from him right after this, has he given you the undertaking that you are seeking that the government's official bill, whatever it ends up looking like, will in fact cover all the bases that you want covered, that your bill does?
There were a number of principles set out by the courts on this, and we are hoping that all those principles are in this new draft of this new legislation. We're also hoping we're all consulted on it, and that the promise is out there that we will be. So again, cautiously optimistic is exactly the way to describe the situation. But I would say also keep the pressure up a little bit, because we don't want this dragging on any longer than it already has. We've gone through, over a year now of trying to push this forward. So let's get it done before any other babies are born.
Sure, governments have two options when issues like this come forward. They can just simply take your private member's bill from an opposition member and get that passed, or they can take all the same stuff that's in it and basically, do it themselves and I guess kind of deny you the credit and give themselves the credit. Do you have any objection to the way that they're doing it right now?
It's lovely, like it was with conversion therapy, for them to just take my bill and pass it in 2 months. That's kind of a miraculous situation, as you know, at Queen's Park. That happens, once every 100 years or so. I'm realistic. I just want to get things done. I think our constituents are realistic. I think the people who elect us to office just want to see people get along and get things done. And if you hear anything from the electorate, it's we're sick of the partisan nonsense. We want to see action, and we're hoping to give them that.
Well, as the older of two siblings, I do have to ask why the younger sibling gets first billing in this bill, Jennifer. Any idea why?
We put the names in the bill in alphabetical order.
Ah, I see.
Which we felt was a principled basis on which to name it. It also, I think, has a nice flow. Cy and Ruby flows very well.
Cy and Ruby flows better than Ruby and Cy?
I think it does.
Ruby is going to grow up saying, Mom always liked you better.
Ruby holds her own. She'll do just fine.
Okay. We thank all of you for coming into TVO tonight and explaining this to us. Sherry DeNovo, the NDP member for Parkdale High Park, Kirsty Mathers-McHenry, and Jennifer Mathers-McHenry, the two parents at the center of this. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joining us now for the provincial government's view in the nation's capital, Yasir Naqvi. He's Ontario's Attorney General and the Liberal MPP for Ottawa Centre. Attorney General, welcome to TVO. Your first interview here, I think, since your promotion a couple of weeks ago. You were listening into that interview that I just did with Sherry DeNovo and the two new mothers, and I wonder if there's anything in particular you want to pick up on before I get to my list of questions.
Well, I just want to say, it's always great to hear the excitement from new parents. As you know, I'm a fairly young parent as well with two young kids, and we need to make sure that all parents are treated equally, whether they are from an LGBTQ2 or straight family, and whether their children are conceived with or without assistance. And I think Sherry DeNovo said it best. All of us as legislators have to work in a cooperative manner to ensure that when it comes to issues around protecting people's human rights, that we are all working together, and that's exactly what we're doing on this particular issue.
Okay, let me follow up on that, because obviously you've only been Attorney General for less than 2 weeks here, so the fact that nothing has changed over the past 10 years is hardly all your fault, but the file is definitely on your desk right now. So tell me, why do you think there's been no movement for the past decade?
Well, so the laws have been evolving as we recognize same-sex couples, and we recognize their rights under the family law. A lot of the laws that were written in the past just had different presumptions attached to them. So if you look at, for instance, the Child Law Reform Act, it presumes that a couple or parents are a husband and a wife, which we know is not true anymore. Give you a particular instance. One of the provisions speaks of that a husband is assumed to be a father just automatically within that piece of legislation. We know that discriminates against to lesbian mothers because both are women. So we need to make sure that our laws are adopted. Over the last 10 years, certain changes were made to the law, especially to Vital Statistics Act in terms of recognizing same-sex parents. Clearly, we need to do more, and that's we as a government and as legislators at Queen's Park committed to doing so.
Okay, let me just go down a bit of a checklist with you here. As you know, Sherry DeNovo's bill, Bill 137, does a couple of things in addition to recognizing non-biological mothers as parents. And Sheldon, if you would, let's put this list up. Number one, it removes all so-called gendered language from birth registration forms. So trans men who give birth will no longer be forced to identify as quote-unquote mother, which is discriminatory and denies their lived reality. And two, families with more than two parents will be able to register the birth of their child and to be immediately and equally recognized. Now, that information from a backgrounder from Sherry DeNovo's office on Bill 137. On those 2 points, do you consider the current parental recognition law in the province unconstitutional?
Well, we know the law, as we speak, is not inclusive, and it may not meet the test of equality that's outlined in the Charter. Our commitment, Steve, is to make sure that we write a piece of legislation that is inclusive, that makes sure that all parents are treated equally and their children are treated equally as well. But we want to also take a step further, which I think is also very much part and parcel of Cy and Ruby Act that Bill Sherry DeNovo tabled, and which is to make sure that we, as much as we can look prospectively, look at what other configuration of families that may exist and see if we, through legislation, can cover them as well. That's why one of the commitments we have made is over the summer, July and August, essentially, is to do targeted consultations with parents, with Sherry, of course, and other legal experts, so that we can draft a bill that is inclusive, that is constitutional, with the aim of tabling it in the House in September.
Now, I'm not going to speak for Sherry DeNovo, of course, but she might say, why don't you save yourself all the trouble and just pass my bill? My bill has been written with the assistance of people at the Ontario Legislature. The two people at the center of the bill, the two mothers, are both lawyers themselves. Seems, she would argue, that a lot of that work's already been done. Why not just go with her bill?
A fair point, and I think Sherry, I also agree with Sherry's point that if we can make a bill better, then let's do that. I'm somebody who, when I was not in cabinet, wrote many private members' bill, and I can tell you, private members' bill definitely take the issue up to a certain level, but there's always more work to be done. We did a thorough analysis of Cy and Ruby Act within my ministry. We wholeheartedly agree with the principles that are outlined in the legislation. What we need to do now is to make sure that the new bill by the government meshes in well with the existing family law legislations. As you know, and you may know that it will impact many other pieces of legislation, such as the Children Law Reform Act, such as the Vital Statistics Act, and we need to make sure that it's written in a manner that it does not trigger any other things. And there were some concerns raised, the manner in which Cy and Ruby Act has written, that may undermine, for example, single mothers whose biological father may refuse to acknowledge that they fathered a child, unintended consequence that we would not want.
No, I do hear you, but, and let's pick up on a potential obstacle that perhaps is not part of Sherry DeNovo's bill. The fear that, for example, a father would claim he was a sperm donor to get out of paying child support, something like that. One wonders, though, whether or not a simple amendment to the bill that Sherry DeNovo already has up might just take care of those kinds of eventualities, again, rather than having to start from scratch. Is that not possible?
Well, again, the advice I've received that it would have required substantive rewrite of Sai and Ruby Act, and we felt that it would be expeditious to write the bill from the scratch with proper consultations. Again, we as a government 100% agree with the principles that are outlined in the bill, and we all want to make sure the parents included, the LGBTQ2 community, and the government, including the Premier, to make sure that we've got a good bill, a legally sound bill that protects the constitutional rights of all parents and children who are born with or without assistance.
Okay, understood. In which case, moving on, let me understand whether or not the bill that you will now write and propose to bring forward under the Liberal government's own banner, whether that proposed legislation would recognize multi-parent families with, for example, 3 or more parents' names on a birth certificate. Would it?
That is something absolutely we are looking into, and that's why consultation is very important. And as I was stating to you earlier, we need to make sure that we look at all different type of families that exist and make sure that we are able to give them legal recognition and be able to treat them equally. So the question of multi-parents is very much part and parcel of our intention to be part of this bill, and we will be, of course, consulting with legal experts in that regards, again, as to how do we draft the bill, use the language in a legislation, which you know is extremely important, so that we cover those type of families as well.
And again, picking up from a comment that was made during the last interview with the 2 parents, with the new legislation, will the biology of the parent matter more than the intent to be a parent? You heard that at the moment, the sperm donor actually has more legal parental rights than the actual parent of these kids.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I think one of the difference we know that exists, that the current laws are written solely based on biology. Sai and Ruby Act was written more in line around intention of parenting. One of the blueprints that we are looking at is the Uniform Child Status Act, which was created by the Uniform Conference of Law, which is a body of experts that have created a draft bill in this regards. And what they have developed a mechanism which is a hybrid of 2, where both biology and intention plays a role. So our aim is to look at that issue very closely, of course, in our consultation. Of course, one has to consider legal interpretation as well if you ever get into legal disputes, which is bound to happen and happens usually, and make sure that we have the right balance to, of course, protect the children, which is extremely important, but also protect the rights of the parents.
Okay. Attorney General, I know you're fighting a cold, so we're grateful that you spared some time for us tonight on TVO. Thanks very much for coming on the agenda.
Thank you very much for your interest in this very important issue, Steve. That's
Yasir Naqvi, MPP, Ottawa Centre, and as of the last couple of weeks, the Attorney General of Ontario.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.